Hello and welcome. Today I have this. This is an instrument I have tried to get for my collection for a very long time, but they've always been a bit expensive and the instruments have eluded me. Not so anymore, for I bring to you a Cornopean. This is an instrument that is considered the forerunner to the modern cornet, and indeed if you compare this with a cornet, they actually look reasonably similar at first glance. The key thing though that makes the Cornopean special is the type of valves that they use. Unlike normal piston or Pyrenees valves that we use these days, Cornopeans use what's called a Sturzel valve or a tubular valve. Now these valves were invented by Heinrich Sturzel in Germany land in approximately 1818, and initially instruments that featured his valves only had two valves. It wasn't until a little bit later that they added the third valve so that the instrument could be the sort of chromatic arrangement that we are familiar with today. The tuning schema for these would be the same as what we use these days. The first valve lowers the pitch by a tone, the second valve lowers the pitch by a semitone, the third valve lowers the pitch by a tone and a half. However, there were reversed configurations that were particularly popular in Germany where the first and second valves were switched around in terms of tuning slide length. First valve would be half a tone, second valve would be a tone, third tone would be a tone and a half. I've never yet seen one of those sort of instruments in the flesh, but allegedly they were quite popular in the sort of early part of the 1800s. So the key thing to note with Sturzel valves or tubular valves is that the air doesn't just go through the valves. The air also utilizes the inside of the valve itself. You'll see here that there is a tube that connects the second and third valves together, and the main bell crook is connected to the bottom of the first valve. So how this airflow pathway works is that the air goes through the valves in the order of 3, 2, 1. As the air, for instance, leaves the second valve, it goes through to this pathway, and if you don't use the first valve, the air gets redirected down the bottom of the valve and it squirts out the bell section. This design has got a couple of sort of interesting characteristics. Number one is that there are a lot of tight bends and twists. If you do use the first valve, then the airflow has to jump up from this level to this level, and that's a reasonably dramatic change to occur in the space of what is quite a small diameter valve. Also, the way that the air gets redirected down, there isn't a nice clean 90-degree bend or anything like that. The air just smushes straight into the opposite wall of the valve, and there's no other way that it can go other than down. So it introduces quite a lot of resistance. So here on the valve, we can see that there is a pathway straight through here. Now this is the pathway that is used coming from the second valve, and it just goes straight through. There isn't a 90-degree bend going down or anything like that. The air is going to try and just go straight through. It's not going to have any success because there's a wall here, and so the air has to go downwards. That's the only way that it can go. And then if we look at the bottom of the valve, we will see that is the out port. So air comes through this portway. It can't go any further because there will be a wall blocking it, so it's forced down. And then that's coming from the second valve going down, and this is coming out of the first valve tuning slide. Again, it's pushed down, so there's a wall here, and so it has to go out the bottom. It's a novel approach, and it's an interesting approach, but it's again not what we see these days with Pyrenees valves, which are a lot more refined in their design. That being said, however, it's not actually as bad to play as I was expecting. And the sound of the instrument is reasonably close to what we see with modern cornets. It plays, obviously like a 150 or however many years old this instrument is. It plays like a very old instrument, but it doesn't have the dramatic extra resistance that I was expecting when I did some study and analysis on these valves. So I'll give you an idea of what it sounds like.